Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your support. We'd like to also thank Storyfort, Sam, and the Idaho State Museum for welcoming us here. We really appreciate the opportunity. This is really important to a lot of us, so thank you. We also want to thank the Idaho Department of Corrections. First, for allowing our programs and our volunteers into the facilities in the first place. We wouldn't be able to have the impact that we do without that support. And also, as I'm sure many of us have seen in light of recent events, we just really want to extend our support to the 3 brave officers who were injured in the line of duty. Our hearts go out to you and to your family, and so thank you for your service. We appreciate you too. So today's agenda, just to give you a little quick snapshot, we'll start with some info about the Idaho Prison Arts Collective, what our why is. We'll move into our panel of readers, and they'll share some of their stories of personal experiences. We'll conclude with a Q&A session, and then we'll break down. We have a little extra time today, which is nice, but we're going to try to clear out of here by about 12:15. So, if you like what you hear and you want to hear about more upcoming events and you'd like to support our efforts in the future, there will be an email sign-in sheet. Please sign in for us, get on our electronic mailing list, and we'd love to keep you up to date with what we have going on. So a little bit about the Idaho Prison Arts Collective. We're all about bringing transformative arts into correctional facilities and giving a voice to people who have been impacted by incarceration. I'm currently a resident. My name is Chris Shanahan. I live at the Treasure Valley Community Reentry Center, and the arts have absolutely changed my life. I was about 7 years into my incarceration, and I would have a meltdown talking to one person one-on-one. And I really attribute my experience with the arts to the volunteers that brought those into us in the facility I was in, the Idaho State Correctional Center, with helping me to work through what was genuine debilitation. So for me, the arts have absolutely changed my life. I mean that literally. I was pretty broken before my experience with them. So it's really important to me that we support those. Our mission is to provide as many opportunities as possible for residents of the Idaho prison communities to have transformative arts experiences. Using the arts, we publicly advocate for the humanity of those in and affected by the carceral system. We currently offer drawing, painting, guitar, writing, and dance classes in 3 different facilities, and have also done system-wide activities like writing contests. If you'd like to learn more, you can support us with a donation, but please just sign up for our electronic mailing list. With that, I want to introduce a man by the name of Ty Clements, and I'm going to read a poem for him since he can't be here today. He is incarcerated in the Idaho State Correctional Institution, and the name of this poem is Through a Realm. Pendulum swings, clock hands move, each steady paced. Haunted futures, none will know, happenings of the past. Clear elixir, left untouched for anyone to drink. Wind chimes sing, each one unique, some loud, others soft. Quagmire cross, sinking each step, struggling with the next. Rusted gate, forever closed, a cottage left bare. Water flows, deep is the ocean, gutters are shallow. Macabre clouds deeply rumble together, sun reluctantly hides. Windy storm, saplings are threatened, wildly swaying around. Animals caught, out in the open, fur soaked and matted like today. Eloquently mixed, sunrise colors painted on light blue canvas. Purple gem exposed in the mud, unpolished and perfect. Another piece that Ty shared with us, and I forgot to mention this, but he was one of our students in the Prison Arts Creative Writing Program, instructed by one of our members, Michael Richardson. This is A Worn Anvil Awaits. In the truck bed, a worn anvil awaits. The next horseshoe needing to be fit. With that, I'd like to introduce our next panel member. His name is TJ Harter. He also attended Michael Richardson's writing class at ISCI a couple of years ago. He was released from prison in August. Among other things, he's a master crochet artist and now runs his own landscaping company. Please welcome TJ Harter to the stage. And you can leave that right there if you want.
All right. Okay. Good morning. What am I in church? I said good morning. Okay, I'm very nervous right now. I'm more of a writer and not a public speaker, so if there's any kids in here, I'm going to talk about some things that might be inappropriate for them to hear, so just a forewarning. Also, Ms. Diaz, thanks for showing up. Best case manager. I'm going to talk about some things that reflect some case managers. In no way is it you two, Broso and Diaz. You guys were great. So, all right, let's get started. I'd like to start with the soon-to-be obvious. I'm not a public speaker. This is my first time speaking to a crowd, so please be empathetic in my current situation. I'm very nervous. When I was first asked about reading one of my stories here, I was honored, but also very afraid. I didn't want to do it. I spoke with my friend Jason Burdett, who has mentored me and has had his story shared here in years before. I told him I was not wanting to be so vulnerable in front of a group of strangers. His words to me were, "Challenges make us grow, especially when we have courage to conquer fear, and that I've already done that through committing to read." He told me that my writing and voice matter, and in fact it matters a lot. He told me that I represent all that cannot represent themselves, and those who have been forgotten to exile and banishment. He reminded me that the public mind has to be changed so that it influences the policy decisions of politicians. He told me that my success in any capacity demonstrates the potential for the rest of the convicted. He told me the most important reason that my voice in writing matters is because I matter, and that this experience, regardless of how scary it is, will help me develop a much healthier, more confident self-image. He wants me to let Boise see me as he and my other friends see me. He said, "Let you discover how we see you." All right, so I was already introduced as TJ, but my legal name, my name is Thomas Harter. I spent roughly 7 years in Idaho State prisons. I've served for aggravated battery, assault on personnel, domestic violence, possession with intent to manufacture or deliver, and multiple misdemeanors, all being drug and alcohol related, with violence always being attached. My life has been eventful, with moments seeming out of a movie. Most people might find it hard to believe these events happened if I did not have the pictures to prove it. My life before prison was chasing substance and entertainment. In truth, I was trying to escape my reality. I rambled hard, trying to prove myself to others that I was not afraid or weak. My actions proved the opposite. In my years of living the fast life, I never found true security or peace. I felt the emptiness of my lifestyle. This made me insecure to my core. I would cover that up with grandiose living. It would inevitably all spiral out of control, and I would become violent or immature. I blamed others for my position in life. I committed acts of violence. Drugs and alcohol ruled me. I've been held accountable for my crimes against others and myself. Prison was bittersweet for the mirror that I put in front of me. People like me make real-life changes when the pain of changing is less than the pain of staying the same. Losing loved ones and friendships while in prison has caused me to reflect on this truth. This is a story of losing a loved one while I was in prison. On a November morning, I was awoken by a prison guard in an Idaho State Penitentiary. I woke facing a window no wider than a man's skull. I could see through the dinge of the thick, dirty glass. The November sky matched the floor and walls of my cell. They were both impersonal cold gray. The colors of hardness and the lack of any warmth comprised what was my world, inside and out. The prison guard was 40 pounds overweight. His appearance matched the lazy, disgruntled tone in his voice. I could tell by the guard's Cheeto-stained pants and 3-day beard that this guy was a real go-getter. I assumed the guard was annoyed with having to pause his 8 hours of YouTube to come wake me up. With a phlegm-filled voice box, he addressed me by my inmate number he was reading off a sticky note. He told me to get up and that I've got a case manager meeting. Good to see you too, pal, I thought to myself, the voice in my head sounding just like Rodney Dangerfield. I pulled myself together, a splash of rust-smelling water to the face, and a swipe of a flimsy, cheap toothbrush that's the length of a matchbox. I stepped out of my gunmetal cell into a massive 2-story cell block that 268 of Idaho's finest call home. The tones of hospital green and institutional sandstone fill the echoing cave that is cell block 15. The roar of killers, bank robbers, perverts, and junkies flood my ears and soften the sound of the cold fluoride-smelling showers that run from sunup to sundown. The familiar copper smell of blood fills the room as it has every day for decades. Home sweet home. I follow a Big Bird-colored line that's painted on the floor. It leads me to the main doors of the cell block. The case manager's office is on the other side of those doors. The mechanical bulletproof door opens, so I step in. I was trapped like a rodeo bull, waiting for the next massive door to open. One door clanked shut behind me, the other popped and slid open on its tracks in front of me. I followed the hallway and read that I've reached the case manager's office. The door was cracked and swung completely open as I knocked, so I casually stepped in. Inside the office were 2 women, both sitting at a single desk. One of the women looked like a golden girl, and the other had a butch haircut, with a Costco casserole being shoved into her mouth. The room was small and crowded. The women looked extremely uninviting. The woman with the butch haircut took charge of the room and told me to sit down as she gestured to an old metal chair. I sat down and read the vibe of the room. This is not a good meeting. The older woman looked me dead in the eye and almost robotically said, "Your father has died over the weekend. Because it was a weekend, there was no case managers here to take their call. Your family, they've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I can give you 1 free call, but if they don't answer, your chance is over." She hands me a phone. I dialed a number I've known all my life. In the days before cell phones, when one would ride their bike across town to visit a friend just to find out he's not there, and on the way back steal cigarettes from the 7-Eleven, the days when kids broke bones at the bike jump, before the internet, when life was real and not watered down in digital chicken shit, in those days, everyone knew at minimum 10 phone numbers offhand. I am from those days, and so was the number I needed to dial. The old plastic, flesh-colored phone rang into my ear. 1 ring went through the line, and my thought was, I'll wake up from this nightmare before the second ring. The phone rang a second time. The line was interrupted halfway through by a familiar voice. I heard a soft, feminine voice say hello. The tone of the voice flashed images of strawberry shortcake and a golden Labrador. I couldn't tell if the voice was that of one of my sisters or of my mother. They have identical vocal cords passed on from generations of sacrifice and faith. I say hi and let her know it's me and that I've just been told about Dad. In a slight Chicago accent, identifying the recipient of my call as my oldest sister, she tells me Mom has been trying to reach me and how dehumanizing the process has been, and that the prison won't let me attend the funeral of my own father. I asked her what happened to Dad. She let me know he had a heart attack in his sleep and that our mom tried to save him, but it was too late. The whole thing didn't seem real to me. She felt the same way and kept saying how she thinks he's going to be walking through the door any minute now. Her voice shaking at the end of her sentencing was overwhelming and caused me to fight off my own tears. I felt the truth of what had happened to my father hit me like a wave consuming and crushing somebody who ignorantly turns their back to the open ocean. I held in silence, doing my best to choke down the lump in my throat. I felt tears building behind my eyes. One escaped and rolled down my face. I looked down as to not have these 2 strangers in the room see me in my vulnerability. I took in a deep breath and pushed out the tremble in my voice. I then asked about our mom and how she's taking things. I found myself immediately short of breath and sniffling in a snivel and holding back the shake in my chest. She told me Mom's as tough as they come and that she's not letting people see how hurt she really is. She told me that Mom's been busy with everyone coming to the house to pay their respect. She then paused and said everyone keeps bringing over bagels. She told me she thinks maybe everyone thinks we're Jewish. That's the only way to explain the flood of bagels. She knew I wanted to talk to our mom, but let me know it was a bad time and that I needed to call back in a few hours when the house was cleared out. She told me to keep it together and not be a pussy about the whole thing. She reminded me that I'm the baby of the family, but now I've got to be the man, that our dad is gone. She let me know, excuse me. She let me know that she loves me and told me not to go knocking someone's head off in there, and that it was my knucklehead ways that got me in there in the first place. I told her I love her and that I would call tonight if the day rooms are open, but that I might be stuck in my cell because the Idaho Department of Correction uses staffing issues as an all-around reason to not be decent or mindful that us inmates are people too. The phone made a double backing sound as the line closed. I held the dead phone to my ear. I remained looking down. I collected my strength, or some might see it, I repressed my weakness. A swift swipe to my brim, I cleared the tear from my face. I stood avoiding eye contact. With the two women. I stood avoiding eye contact with the two women. I asked if I could return to my cell block in a cold, emotionless voice. Without word, they both nodded yes and dismissed my presence in the room. As I stepped out, I heard them nodding their heads and dismissed my presence. As I stepped out, I heard them begin their shuffle of papers for the next poor sucker who's got a visit with the charm committee. Each step walking back to my cell felt like I had sandbags tied to my ankles. I dragged and slid my way back down the hall that I came from before I knew I was fatherless. I held my composure like a Greek statue. I couldn't show my weakness. I couldn't show that I was vulnerable. Not there in the place of wolves and vultures. Nothing is sacred there. No one cares beyond their own self-interest. Walking back onto my cell block, feeling like a wounded gazelle in the lion's den, I slithered as fast as I could back into my hollow in the cement cage. As the door closed behind me in my cellie rolled over on the top bunk, and in a Chicano accent he said, "Hey, white boy, why are you looking like a killer?" A gangster smile found his way to his face as he stuck out his tongue and made his eyebrows wiggle and jump like a humorous silent film mime. Raw, repressed emotion rose up out of my lungs, making my voice tremble. As I told him, I just got some bad news. I quietly shut my mouth, looked down, and walked to my bunk, where I felt out of sight of my cellie's surveying eyes. I was hiding and holding my breath as though I was in danger. I was attempting not to break down in extreme grief. I felt weight, heavy, unbearable weight on my chest. My eyes became swollen and fogged over in tears. I couldn't keep the tears in their glands, and they flowed out of my eyes like a desert's first rain. Years of pain came flowing through, heavy with decades of no release. They sped out, rolling over and gliding over my face and my trembling lips and shaking chin. I released a breath from my crushing chest, and before I could push the entire breath out, an uncontrollable catch and snivel held in the back of my throat. I gasped in to catch my breath, but the ugly face crying began. Without any self-control, as though I was possessed, I cried and shook and shriveled into the corner of my bunk. My cellie was fully aware that I was crying like a hungry baby bird in the bunk below him. In his gangster's definition of compassion, he sat in silence. He allowed me to go through what needed to be gone through. He knew I didn't want to be seen like that. No man does. He did his best as to seem as though he wasn't there. He didn't move or ask the rhetorical question of, "Are you okay?" His silence let me know he knows. I felt sorry for him in a way, like I was putting him in a very uncomfortable position. I tried to tell him I was sorry, but the words couldn't be understood. After uncharted minutes of me wiping away tears and painfully choking down tremors in my voice box, I was able to see again. The tears slowed and held for a moment. I took in a full breath and released it without my breath being squeezed back down. Finally, I could speak clear enough to be understood. I told him I felt like a little bitch, and I'm sorry for having a breakdown like that. The whole time my eyes looked down as a chimpanzee does when they're asking their chief for forgiveness. He tells me, "It's okay, Vato. Sometimes in vida, nosotros tenemos tiempo duro." He said, "Life is hard. Let it out, Holmes." I told him that my dad died and that the warden wasn't going to let me go to the funeral. I let him know I was in bad shape, feeling real fucked up about the whole thing. I felt my head shake in disapproval, as though I was looking in at my own situation in disbelief of the insensitivity of the prison's administration. My cellie told me that he could relate to somewhat of what I was going through. He reminded me that he was there for murder. In his words, he told me, "You know I'm here for smoking some fool, right? Well, the SA's eyes, who I closed forever, he killed my little brother and my kid Primo. He told me nobody fucks with his familia, his raza. He told me he rolled up on that fool in his barrio and closed his chapter forever." His voice got louder with each word in the rage he used to cover up his pain. He told me the police caught him before he could make it back to his house. While he was in county, he didn't get to go to his little brother and cousin's funeral. He told me that shit had him real fucked up for a long time. He paused as though he was seeing those moments pass through his mind in a matter of seconds. Life moments, which can last forever, can be seen in the human mind in mere seconds. I knew that's where he was, lost in his memories and emotions. He said, "People tell him time heals a broken heart, but when all you have is time, we need something else." He said some turn to the Bible for its words of wisdom, but he turns to drugs. He said reading some shit an old dead guy wrote down forever ago does nothing for him, but getting lit up on something takes his pain away. He paused in a way as to lead me to anticipation, like he was leading up to something. I stayed quiet in the way he did for me. This said more than words could. He said, "I'll tell you what, white boy, I'll hook you up one time because I know you're going through it. But if you start wigging out on me, I won't hesitate to put you down." A killer's tone came into play as he told me and not to be turning into a fucking hoto on him. He slid off the top bunk. His bare feet slapped the cold gray floor of the cell, the sound sounding like a slap to the face. I asked him what it was that he had, like something to smoke or to drink. The nervousness in my question was obvious by the suburban tone in my voice. He turned to me, shirtless, covered in prison tattoos from throat to toenail. He lifted one eyebrow and tapped a tattooed teardrop under his left eye with his pointing finger. He then put that same finger to his lips and the universal shh. His shh looked more like a shut the fuck up. So I did. He walked to the metal sink and toilet conjoined on the far side of the two-man cell. He pulled down his bleach white boxers, exposing the clown tattooed on his giant uncircumcised penis. I then realized why people called him Joker. He sat down on the shiny metal seat. In a humorous yet annoyed pitch, he barked at me, "Are you going to take a fucking picture or what, homie?" It was then I came to realize I was watching him. I was not interested in seeing him unclothed. It just seemed as though he had something for me, so my eyes were following what felt to be a lead. In my ignorance, I didn't comprehend that what he had for me was kept in his prison pocket, up his ass. I turned my head and looked at the wall as though there was nothing else going on in the small confines I was trapped in. I began to read the writing on the walls left by inmates who had the privilege of calling this hole their home before me. A loud grunt filled the room, followed by a clicking sound of stone hitting metal. I tried to avoid the obvious observation that what I had just heard was the sound of a conduit holding contraband had just exited a man's ass into a metal toilet. I then came to terms that whatever was just in that man's ass will be given to me as a gift. I thought to myself, what the absolute fuck? The shit people go through to get high. Literal shit. I remained focused on the walls as if they held my interest. In fact, all they held was me in my sorrowful state. My mind wandered back to the fact that I am now without a father. I started to think about my mother and considered how she must feel. Her and my father were married in the 1970s and remained that way for 50 years. For half a century, my mother never had to worry about cutting the grass, cleaning the gutters, or any other honeydews that the baby boomers had in their lives. Now she was without her life's partner, without her loving servant. I questioned myself on how this was all going to get done now, with worry taking over my mind. I feared that someone might take advantage of my mother's situation. I needed to be there. I needed to take care of her in the house. Those thoughts were followed by the reality that I will not be there for her, and no one will be riding a white horse into my family's lives to pick up the Humpty Dumpty that was our world. My thoughts shifted to my last conversation I had with my father. Him and I became close during imprisonment. He was a volunteer at the Corpus Christi house. Our last conversation was about him working there every day because they were having a hard time finding long-term volunteers at their shelter due to the grit needed to stay there for long. I was telling him that maybe he should take a break from the place. His last words to me were, "Son, if I don't do it, who will? I will never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, because that's all who ever have." Those words sounded deep at that very moment. 2.5 days later, in that exact moment, I made the choice to never do drugs again, and I haven't for almost 6 years now. I stopped committing myself to being a victim and transformed myself into being a survivor. I sought help from professionals and did the work on myself to recognize, call out, and correct my character defects. If I didn't do it, who would? I applied myself in prison and evolved into somebody who can be trusted and counted on to do the right thing. I kept the same job in the prison kitchen for 5 years. I was required to do 3 classes. I did over 20. I gained a college education. I learned another language and how to play the guitar. I volunteered with the American Legion during the pandemic, and I even joined a book club, learned to crochet, and became a leading member in the Alternative to Violence Project, where yogis from India came to the prison to teach me one-on-one on how to break the bondages of self-seeking. I helped bury the hatchet with many prison beefs and stepped up whenever the need was there. Because if I didn't do it, who would? One of the many programs I was involved in while I was in prison is how I'm here speaking to you today. I became a member of the Idaho Prison Arts Collective, where I had some of my writings published. I know now that all cruelty stems from weakness, and my weakness was deeply rooted in my lack of accomplishments in anything honorable. I took that truth and applied myself. Look at me now. I've accomplished so much in spite of my past choices. I started my own business, and I work at a church where I help feed the homeless 6 days a week. Some of the same people I help every week are the same people my father was helping when he was alive. I've had less than a handful of days off in the last 7 months. It can get hard at times, but if I don't do it, who will? Thank you for your time, and a special thanks to Michael Richardson with the Idaho Prison Arts Collective for providing me with a platform to be expressive and vulnerable in a meaningful way. I get a weekly reminder, but some of you may not have the same passion as me. My life, my story is a testament that it's never too late to start doing the right thing. Remember these 4 things. Your life matters. There is always hope. No crisis will last forever. And others can and will help. Just keep asking.
Wow, that's a tough follow for anybody, but we've got some pretty great people coming up. But I just heard TJ's stories for the first time last night, and I was pretty rocked too. So it is my pleasure to introduce Michel Copenhaver next. Michel is a close friend of mine, and he's like a brother to me. He is trailblazing in life and the Idaho Department of Corrections, and is one of the most inspiring people that I've ever met. In his own words, Michel Copenhaver.
They made it complicated. There's a lot of things to do. Thank you. When you think of the word mentor, what image pops into your head? For me, that image is a role model, a leader, someone who has successfully navigates life. But it's more than that. They also have to be someone I can relate to on a more personal level. They've been through similar struggles and overcome a lot of the same obstacles that I have faced. Their success gives me hope that I too can do it. Why do I ask about mentors? Well, it's my job to find mentors in prison, and I really do enjoy my job. I am contracted with the Idaho Department of Correction to standardize the mentor training across the state. Me, a person who has done 25 years on the inside of those walls, is now working with the department to change the culture. And you better believe that it is changing. This program is about self-development, supporting your peers, developing a better community inside those walls, using positive influence to send ripples of hope through those facilities. The number of mentors grow each month. There are over 150 men and women who have completed the training. These mentors develop skills in active listening, empathy, conflict resolution, critical thinking, goal setting, and much more to help support their peers. But more than that, it's helping them with the challenges of life. None of this is required. People are simply choosing to be better. There are mentors in every sense of the word. Their peers see their success and know they have a new option. It excites me to think of where we are going with all of this. The possibilities are boundless. It hasn't always been this way. I haven't always been this person. When I was a senior in high school, I made the decision to take a life. I was so selfish at the time that the gravity of it all didn't truly hit me. I took a life, but I took so much more than that. The ripple effect of that action spread through my family, my friends, my community. I will never fully comprehend the pain and suffering that I inflicted on the people around me at that time. And I will never be able to make amends for that to those I hurt. For that crime, I was sentenced to 25 to life. For the longest time, I sat in that concrete box, frustrated, sad, angry, hurt, scared, immature, trapped by my own limited ability to see beyond my immediate desires. I hated prison culture, but I lived in it. But worse than that, I supported it. For more than half of my life, I supported it, and I was stuck in it. I wanted change. I wanted something different for so long. And I did realize that complaining about my situation and all the things around me that I disliked wasn't getting me anywhere. Granted, it took me 20 years to come to that epiphany that maybe the concrete wall that I was banging my head against wasn't the problem. It was me. I was smart enough to realize that even if I ever wanted a chance at life outside of my prison, I would need to develop some new skills. Problem is, I spent 20 years learning to ignore my emotions, avoiding people, only thinking of my own interest in surviving. It's one thing to know that you need to change, but where do you begin? It can quickly become overwhelming and seem impossible, especially when you have to live one life to survive and try to be someone else that you can look at in the mirror when you are alone. An opportunity arose where I could grow these needed skills in a safe place. It started with a group of guys asked to help improve their community. The warden of the facility, Randy Blades, came to a few of my friends and asked what could be done to bring some light to a place that had earned the nickname Gladiator School. This core group of men quickly set about gathering ideas and like-minded people with a simple question: how do we make this place better? We all knew what was wrong, everything. And we had some really great ideas on how to fix it. But apparently you can't just change the culture of prison with a few hours of excited discussion and some words about we're changing the world. Especially when you're looking at the problem from only your perspective. You have to put in some work. Most of that work was educating myself. Every time I came to a problem, I had to learn a million things to truly understand that problem. And then find a solution that worked for everyone, not just me. What was great was that I was surrounded by my friends, and with the help of Warden Blades, we had the support of staff, which was huge at the time. To do what we thought would help, we started offering real peer support and doing things to improve our community. That collaboration grew, and I learned just enough to have hope that I could succeed when I did walk out of those gates. The thing that gave me the greatest hope was seeing my mentors, my friends, succeed. Their success showed me that it was possible. 5 years ago, I stepped outside of that concrete box that I had called home for 25 years. It was scary, more terrifying than going to prison in many ways, because now I understood responsibility and the consequences of a selfish life. I was fortunate to have family and friends standing by my side, supporting my return, and I lived happily ever after. Okay, maybe not. It hasn't been easy. I did what they told me to do. I got that job. I paid my supervision. I started living my life. If you looked at me on paper, I was a success story. But numbers on paper don't always tell the story, because 6 months later, I was ready to return to prison. All I did was work, sleep, eat, and work some more. And I hurt. My body hurt because a decade and a half of laying around playing basketball here and there or doing a few burpees once in a while does not prepare you for a full day of physical labor. I had so many dreams of all the things I was going to do when I got out. And before I knew it, 6 months had passed. There was something missing in my life. I had no idea what it was, but I did know something was wrong. When I was walking in Fred Meyer and I passed the alcohol aisle, and I thought, that's a good idea. That's a good idea? What was happening? I spent the past 2.5 decades dreaming about getting out, and now I was looking at something that would send me into oblivion to escape the life I had dreamed about for so long. Something was definitely wrong. I left that store shaken. Fortunately, I reached out to one of my best friends and mentor, Mark Person. We had dinner the following night, and I explained it all to him. He told me to quit my job. Probably not the best advice for everybody. But it was just what I needed. We started working together. We were helping people, and that felt good. That felt right. I had the opportunity to go back to prison, and I saw my friends that I had left behind. There was so much I wanted to tell them, but all I said was life was so great out here in the real world, and I only shared the positive. Why did I lie to them? Why didn't I tell them about my struggles? Was it because I didn't want them to worry about their futures? Was I trying to protect them? Was I ashamed of my own weaknesses? Would they see me as a failure? It was probably a combination of all of these. I was ashamed. Mark and I continued to help people as they left prison. We saw people succeed and people fail. At first, I took those failures very personal. After I put my ego aside, I started to look at it as a puzzle to be solved. Why were some failing and others succeeding? I realized we could give a person everything that they needed when they stepped out of those gates. But if the person wasn't mentally prepared to take on the challenges of life, then it was going to be a failure, no matter what material things and support they were offered. I equate it to running a marathon. If I told everyone in this room we had to go run a marathon right now, how many of you could do it? Before you answer, you will be provided the best running shoes available and a whole bunch of cool running gear. There will be lots of people along the way cheering you on and supporting all your efforts. But remember, If you fail to complete that marathon, you will have to go sit in a small room until you are able to complete that marathon. That is what I feel we are asking people to do when they step out of prison. Look at me. In the 25 years I spent behind those walls, I was required to take one class at the end of my sentence. 25 years of do whatever you want. Then, oh, you're getting close to getting out. Take this class real quick. Yay, you're rehabilitated. Now, go run that marathon. It doesn't make sense, right? I saw a need, but I didn't know the solution. COVID did not help improve the situation. It was a dark time for many of us, and worse for those in prison. Chris Shanahan and a few others carried the light of the mentor program through those dark times. He was transferred to another facility and was able to use his knowledge to build a program at that facility. Seeing what Chris was doing and remembering my own ties to the program, an idea started to form in my head. I used my lived experience to look at the problem. I studied it and asked questions of the people directly related to it. I have surrounded myself with a lot of remarkable people, brilliant in their own ways. I used their knowledge and insight to further my own ideas. I took the idea to the Deputy Director of Prisons, Bree Derrick. She liked it and said, let's do it. I had no idea what that let's do it entailed. Chad Page, Chief of Prisons, was instrumental in guiding me through the process of how to turn my idea into a plan. If it hadn't been for his leadership, friendship, mentorship, and support, I wouldn't be standing here today. Every step of the way, there has been someone that has helped me. They took the time to teach me and support me as we built this program. It has been a lot of work by a lot of amazing people, both staff, residents, and people in the community, to create what the mentor program is today. I am extremely proud of this program and what we are doing. Idaho Department of Correction leadership has a vision and an entire strategic initiative directed at changing the culture of the prison system. I get to be a part of that. And it feels really good going from banging my head on the wall to helping others discover paths around those walls. In my journey of helping create and build the Resident Peer Mentor program, I have continually had to learn new things about myself. I have grown more in the past few years as a person than at any other time in my life. I credit a lot of that growth to the people I am grateful to have by my side in this work we are all doing. Many of those people are sitting in this room. I would like to thank them for just being you. Together, we are building something here that is starting to send ripples through the prison systems across the country and may very well revolutionize the future of how prisons operate in the United States. Thank you.
As somebody who's had a front row seat to watching Michael leave and come back again, believe me when I tell you that words, they can't capture the impact that he's having inside our prison walls. And thank you, Michael, for everything you're doing for all of us. I'd next like to introduce Rachael Meyer. Rachael is a loving mom, a highly respected friend and peer mentor, and one of the hardest working people I know. Please welcome Rachael to the stage.
Yeah. Oh, is that good? Sorry. Brene Brown says, vulnerability fuels our daily lives, and vulnerability is the most accurate measure of courage. Sharing my story with you today is something I never thought I would be vulnerable enough to do. Prison has always been a part of my family history, but I never thought that it would be a part of my life. I'm from Salt Lake. My mom was a single mom, in and out of a really abusive relationship, and my dad was a heroin addict, in and out of prison. I remember thinking that I would never be like them. I wasn't going to be a weak woman who let a man beat me in front of my children. I wasn't going to be a single mom. I was never going to do drugs or put drugs or relationships before my children, and I especially was never going to go to prison or leave my family. Needless to say, that's not how it happened. I'm 36 now, and I have 4 daughters. I've done all of that. My mom got remarried when I was 14, and her husband put his hands on me, so I moved out and moved in with my boyfriend. I got pregnant when I was 14 and had an abortion. During my freshman year of high school, I found out that I was pregnant again, and my boyfriend was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I dropped out of high school and moved into Primary Children's Hospital with him. That year, I had a stillborn, and he died a few months later. I thought that was the end of the world, and I tried to kill myself. I was couch surfing for a while after that, until I found a place that would rent to me underage. I got my own place and got back in school. I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, Celeste, when I was 16, had her, and 10 months later had my daughter, Haley. I got married. By the time Haley was 2, I was divorced. I lost myself in relationships the same way I watched my mom do when I was a kid. I wanted so bad to give my kids that family that I didn't feel like I had, that I sacrificed us all to do so. I got pregnant again with my twins when I was 21. I was in an extremely abusive relationship, and I ended up in a women's domestic violence shelter with black eyes, a broken nose, broken ribs, 2 daughters, and 2 on the way. I should have left for good that time, and I often wonder how things would have turned out if I did. But I hated that shelter, and I went back because I believed this time was going to be different. He was going to change. We were going to go to counseling. He was sorry. We were going to be a family. I think I was so desperate to be loved that I fell for it every time. I had complications during labor, and one of my daughters passed away. I blamed myself and my daughter's dad for her death. When I got home from the hospital with my daughter Samara, her dad came over and we fought. He was choking me and threatening to kill me and the girls. My neighbor called the police and he left, but when I went back inside the house, my daughters were awake crying. And my daughter Haley asked me if he was going to kill us. I wish it didn't have to go that far, but in that moment I remembered being a scared little girl, listening to my own mom be abused, and I knew it had to stop. I had to get away. I was working as a birth mom coordinator at the time for an adoption agency, and had got really close to a family trying to adopt a baby. I knew that they could keep Samara safe and give her a life that I wasn't capable of giving her at the time. So I asked them to adopt my baby, and I took Celeste and Haley and we left to Arizona. I went through a major depression after that. I was empty, suicidal. I didn't know who I was anymore or where I was going. I hated myself. I've never felt pain like that before. I started dancing to support my kids, and shortly after that I started to use heroin. For the first time since everything happened, the pain in my heart was gone, and it didn't hurt anymore. It took me a few months to get clean and snap out of it, but I ended up getting sober. It didn't take long for another man to come in my life, and I lost myself in him the same way I had the last one. I thought this one was different, though. He seemed like he had it all together. He never put his hands on me or put me down. He was attractive, charismatic, financially well off, and good to me and my daughters. He saw something in me when I was broken and at my worst. I now know that what he saw was opportunity. We started traveling all over and going to places I had never been before. I was so naive and blind to realize that what we were doing was trafficking drugs. By the time I knew that, what we were doing, it was already too wrapped up in him and wanting to be loved and give my girls a family and be stable that it was too late. And honestly, it didn't feel as wrong as selling my body and my soul, so I went with it. Long story short, in 2017, I ended up in jail, pregnant, more lost than ever with a trafficking charge. I had my daughter in jail and got sentenced to 10 years fixed, 20 years indeterminate, for a total of 30 years on a mandatory minimum. I didn't even know what that meant at first. I just knew that I couldn't do it. There was just no way I was going to make it. I tried to kill myself after I got sentenced and spent the first few years of my sentence extremely suicidal. I couldn't go into a room without thinking about how I was going to kill myself. When I finally got to prison, I learned how to crochet. I told myself that I had to make all of my daughter's blankets before I could do it again. After I made all of my daughter's blankets, I had to give myself other little milestones to keep going for. In 2019, I was moved to a minimum security facility and got a job working ILD, which is basically landscaping. I started planting a garden and watching things grow when I felt like I couldn't grow. The garden saved my life and still continues to feed my soul every year. There's something about working in the dirt and planting a little seed and watching the process of its growth that's healing. I realized coming into prison that I have to be the one to break the cycle of addiction and incarceration in my family so that my own daughters don't end up here and I don't end up coming back. I'm determined to break the cycle by showing up for my daughters in any way I can from in here and in ways that my dad wasn't able to show up for me. When he was in prison, I would wait for him to call on holidays just so that I could talk to him and we'd pass the phone around so everyone got a chance to talk. Not having that relationship or connection with him made me feel inadequate. I don't want my daughters to feel that way, so I call every day. Sometimes that's not easy. There are still things every day that I'm not there for and that they need their mom for. And it's been hard, but I force myself to do it and to be open and honest with them. I answer all their questions because there's still a lot of questions I have that I'll never get answers to. Everything I hated about my own parents growing up and thought that I could do better, I became. In certain circumstances, I was worse than them. I understand my parents now. I'm so grateful for them and have compassion on their struggles, especially my mom. She's the strongest woman I know, and without her, I wouldn't be where I am today. She's made it possible for me to still have a relationship with my daughters while in here and still be an active part of their lives. She didn't give up on me even when I had given up on myself. Heroin taught me that my dad was just hurt and trying to numb his own pain from his own trauma, and that it had nothing to do with me not being good enough or him not loving me. The first few years of prison were really hard. I didn't really know how to navigate through everything I was going through or everything that I had been through. Nobody tells you when you come in what to expect or how to deal with life in here and out there. You lose family and friends from out there, and you're constantly losing people from in here because of how quickly people come and go. You build these friendships and attachments with people, and almost as quickly as you've built them, they're gone because they moved out, or they got out, or they died, and it's hard. When I first came to Boise, my friend Margie and I tried to start a group for people doing 5 or more years to help navigate and support each other through it so that nobody had to feel like they were going through it alone. Back then, that wasn't a thing. You didn't just get to create your own groups and classes, and there wasn't really any other classes to take besides the mandatory diluted ones they make you take right before you're about to get out. So you kind of just end up sitting around trying to figure it out on your own. So I worked and stayed busy and out of trouble, but no matter how good my behavior was, it didn't feel like there was a way to progress, and I felt stuck. A couple of years ago, our warden, Noel, told me to apply to the mentor program. I didn't know if I believed in the program back then, and I had already figured out my own way to do time by working, crocheting, working out, and just doing my own time. Even though I had my reservations, I joined Cultivate anyway. I'll be honest, when I started, it was about me. I wanted things to change for me, I wanted to be able to progress and make money. I just had this me state of mind, and the end goal was personal progress. I started doing mentor training and going to different classes and learning. I started seeing people like Michael, Joe, and Mark, who had done a lot of time, come back in and teach us and tell us about their success. That was different for me, because in my family, I had just seen people come in and out. I had never seen anyone do a lot of time and get out and be successful, or come back in because they wanted to. That inspired me and continues to inspire me every day. I started to realize that serving the women around me fills my cup. I didn't think that the mentor program would impact my life the way that it has. I never thought that I would love it the way that I do. I thought I had already grown and found myself as much as I could out in that garden. I never thought it was going to help me find myself or help me find purpose, but it has. I never thought that I would develop relationships with leadership and staff the way that I have. I never thought that they would care about me the way that they do. My boss sees something in me that I don't even see in myself, and so do many of the other people in leadership around me. They believe in me when I don't believe in myself and see potential in me that I don't know that I have. I never thought that just as much as we needed staff to humanize us, we needed to humanize them. I didn't know that they had been through a lot of the same trauma and things that I have been through. I grew up being taught that authority figures were against us, and I believe that. A lot has changed over the past couple years since joining Cultivate. It's not about me anymore. I want to be part of the change to help create opportunities for everyone else coming into the system. Margie and I finally got to start our group. We've been doing it for about a year now. There's so many different little workshops and classes going now that we didn't have years ago, and there's only more to come. I've got to be a part of a lot of cool things over the past couple years. We drove out to Pocatello Women's Prison to talk to the women out there about our mentor program and give them ideas about what we were doing. I've been on panels and to wardens meetings and been able to share my opinion and experience. I've gone to the College of Idaho and talked to the students there about my prison experience, and I'm here talking to you now. This is all because some guys wanted better and saw a need for something, and they had the staff that believed in them. And now it's grown into this. I feel it will only continue to grow. The thing I love most about the program is the hope it creates, the doors that are opening for people, and the relationships we've been able to create and maintain. Thank you.
If anybody wondered what boldness and bravery looks like, we just saw it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I'll be reading for another close friend of mine named Josh King. He's currently incarcerated in the Idaho State Correctional Center and couldn't be with us today. He's a gifted writer, and I'll be reading one of our old favorites by him called Turning West. Looking for hope, I turn west. I picture the rolling Owyhee Mountains with their burnt velvet coat. The great Snake River cuts a green valley at their feet. On a small island, I see the ghost of my father. I cannot hear him, but he calls to me. I wade into the river and listen closely. I hear him. No matter what, be brave. He smiles and fades. Be brave, he says. I walk along the shores, playing games of chance with God, daring him to show me, to show up, but he never does. The river's channel runs deep, like the grooves of an old vinyl record. They record the history on that stretch of water between Marsing and Murphy. Events from 100 years ago replay in translucent images that dance around me as I sit alone on the bank. The water rolls on, carrying my dreams downstream as the setting sun ignites everything it touches. The smell of the earth, rich and dark, the sage, sweet and light. A small campfire keeps me company, and a captured catfish stares and squawks, begging for its life. I'll be reading for another close friend of ours who's currently housed out of state. He wrote the next piece under a pen name, so we're going to leave his true identity a mystery. This piece is called "The Space in Which I Walk." The space in which I walk consists of a distance of a single step and a turn. Lockdown, maximum security unit, 2-cell walks. 336 hours in 2 weeks worth of days. Out of that time, we leave this box for a total of 8 hours, 10 minutes. 35 minutes of outdoor recreation on a dirt-packed yard with patches of dried yellow grass, rocks, and a half-concrete basketball court. The ball is worn bald with use, lying stationary in the corner where fences meet, lopsided to the point that it no longer bounces straight. That followed by 35 minutes of day room time, a scheduled block allotted every other day. This being our day off, which means we do not get any time out today, I break the monotony by performing a step-turn shuffle. The ritual alleviates pain and stiffness brought on by hours upon hours of idleness. I stop, staring mindless out a 6-inch wide by 3-foot tall window. A television mounted on the wall adjacent from the cell door broadcasts a rerun of some hardly successful sitcom on the Laugh Network. A resident from another walk talks on one of the tier's 4 telephones in seemingly defeated-looking manner. A different fella makes his way to a microwave to warm a coffee. None of the usual social camaraderie or shooting the shit. Barely time to give an obligatory head nod of recognition. I notice on the doorframe to my right, the paint is worn in varying degrees, all the way down to the metal. I ponder the phenomenon I am staring at, wondering how much contact must be made with the body to create wear like this. A single touch or brush of clothing at a time, no picking, chipping, or scratching, a clean and polished wear. How much time has been spent standing at the door, peering out the window, starving for sensory stimulation adequate to ease a little of the pain of monotony caused by days, weeks, and months sitting in a box. I take another step and turn as I continue to analyze my existence, the necessity of retribution upon those who cause disruption, nonconformists, rule breakers. I am not alone. I share this tiny space with another, a stranger I just met who has the same name as I. Odd? Tension is constant. Each must do his part to never intrude upon the other. Trespass of this sacred, unspoken pact costs a pound of flesh. Respect and consideration are an assurance of peace. Keeping diligent, I step again and turn. I find comfort in the lights being on in the day room. They give me the sense that I'm not so trapped when everything isn't so lost to the darkness. Step, turn. My custody level changed the other day. I could be released any time. Step, turn. I'm hoping for a move list so I might get to stretch my legs. Step, turn. My mind holds this last thought and desire. A pause in activity, my arm pressed against the doorframe. A personal contribution to the eroding paint. Skin cooled by the chill of bare steel. Franklin. So now I'm very, very privileged to welcome Jay Christensen. Jay is a highly distinguished former employee of the Idaho Department of Corrections. He's been an officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a deputy warden, and a warden. Now retired from the department, he continues to work with the incarcerated. I'm honored to be his friend. Please welcome to the stage Jay Christensen.
So this morning, my wife asked me if I was nervous, and after my response, she told me that she was concerned for me. And I asked her why, and she says, I don't think you can limit yourself to 15 minutes. You got extra. So I do want to start out by echoing the words that Chris said earlier, that my thoughts are with the 3 employees that were injured this past week. And I pray for their speedy recovery. My story, I'm calling it Foundations of Humanity. On September 11th, 2001 was just a normal day for so many people. I was a lieutenant. I was a uniformed lieutenant. I was assigned to day shift as a shift commander at the Idaho State Correctional Institution. And the shift started out normal. But it had only been going for about a half hour when I got a call from Unit 11, Officer Cole. Officer Cole told me that some of the residents had just walked up to the window in the office and said, plane just flew into one of the Twin Towers, and they're in New York, and it seemed like it might be a terrorist attack. And upon hearing that news, I get up and I start walking towards the nearest television. The nearest television was in the courtroom or the conference room at ISCI. I happened to run into another lieutenant, Lieutenant Randy Blades. On the way there, he takes his pager out that gives him news flashes, and he says, I don't have anything on my pager about it. So we go walking in there, and we turn the TV on, and we stand in amazement watching the tower burn. And as we were standing there, we saw the second tower get struck. The rest of the day was a pretty somber day. I think everybody that can remember that can remember kind of how the surroundings were around all of them. It was no different in the correction facility. One of the things I did as a shift commander is I would walk down through the units, and I would walk through the tiers, and I would just make my presence known, talk to people. And as I'm walking through the tiers, something that I notice is that every cell window had a little American flag in it. And they had colored them. They're not American flags that they had. They had taken pieces of paper and colored them and made them the size for their windows. Now in the academy, they taught us never loan your pen. We had a black pen and a red pen for the logbooks, and red were different types of entries. Never loan your pens to the residents because you'll never get them back. But all the staff had been loaning out their red pens so that they could have the red to color the flags. So as I continued to do my walk, I just noticed this was going on everywhere. And flags were dominant all over the place. And about 2 o'clock is when I was getting relieved he was a longtime mentor of mine, Lieutenant Steve Shane. He is a Vietnam veteran. He actually fought in the Battle of Hawaii City. And so that, if that kind of tell you what tough old character he was. I started briefing him on what I had observed as I was walking out there, and his response was, well, sure, they're Americans too. And I think that response from Steve, I don't know as if I ever saw the population the same as I did after that day. And quite frankly, I don't know how I rose to the rank of lieutenants without having that knowledge of that humanity in me. But I'm glad that I was able to recognize that humanity, and Steve helped me to do that. It also made me go back and think about another response that I had received from a lieutenant. How I came to talk here today is I participated in a email thread with IPAC not too long ago. The conversation was about capital punishment. And I shared a story on this email thread about capital punishment. And I bet it was not an hour after that Michael Richardson over here gave me a call and said, Jay, would you be able to say that in public? And after thinking about it a little bit, I thought, yeah, I think maybe it is a good thing that it's said. So I want to talk about how it helped me to understand. Well, let me just tell you this story. When in 1994 there was an execution south of town, that was Keith Eugene Wells. There is an execution team that was assigned and did training. They took part of that. And what took place after that execution, and it may not have been immediate, but that team, they were all friends of mine. I started noticing, several of us started noticing that some really bad things fell upon them. There were multiple divorces. Now remember, there's only 6 people on this team. There were multiple divorces. Some fell into some very serious substance abuse. One went into inpatient mental health treatment. Another one took his life. So one day I was assigned to the lieutenant that was the team leader of that, and I had mentioned to him, do you think that had any correlation, all those things that happened to your team? And I said, did it bother you? And he looks at me and he says, well, let me tell you, Christensen, when you're on the battle, he's a former Vietnam veteran too, so that'll help you understand this. He says, let me tell you something, Christensen, when you're on the battlefield, you raise your weapon and you put your enemy in the sights and you pull the trigger. It is not the same as walking with somebody you've known for years, having a conversation, strapping him down for their execution. Which is not the same at all. That was his response to my question. So, what I take that as is that's him recognizing the humanity in it as well, and how difficult it was. I wanted to share this story to bring awareness that when it comes to capital punishment, it doesn't matter whether you support it or not. It can be just as taxing on every single person that's involved, especially the personnel that's tasked with carrying out as safely and humanely as possible. I can tell you, when I've been part of it, it's been extremely taxing. Somebody put in a lot of hours to make sure all the planning is correct. You work very long days. You go home late to your family and lay awake all night long in bed worrying about it. It's not easy on that. I have witnessed, so and when it comes about whether you're in favor of it or not, personally, I have witnessed residents that have been sentenced to life achieve some absolutely amazing accomplishment and even be able to make major contributions to society while incarcerated. For me, this accomplishes the same goal of public safety for less taxpayers' dollars. We have to attack it from both ends. I can tell you that the Idaho Department of Corrections has been doing some major changes, and I think they're really on a great track here. They're using people that are in the best position to help. They've been there, they've done that. But we need to attack it at the root cause. The root cause is adverse child experiences, the trauma. We must, as a community, recognize that we need to do a better job with childhood trauma, mental health, education support, and involvement in the education. Childhood activities, parenting, role modeling, not just for your own children. When your neighbor's children are in need, you need to do it for them as well. When it comes to returning citizens, that's the other end. We must, as a community, erase that stigma and the challenges faced by returning citizens. If you're an employer, be a second chance employer. April's a great time to start because it is Second Chance Month. If you're a landlord, remove that box from your application. If you meet someone that is a returning citizen, don't be silent. Ask how you can help. Offer support, guidance, and mentorship. Become involved in making their future better. Because as you've heard from all these stories today, they're going to pay it forward. You only have to help one, and they're going to help more. An old African proverb says it best. It takes a village. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. I can tell you, somebody who was incarcerated in a facility that Jay was the deputy warden and then the warden of, that he was one of our biggest supporters of so many of the best things that are happening in the Idaho Department of Corrections right now. So thank you so much for the opportunities that you created for all of us. Thank you. Next, we're going to invite TJ back, and he has a couple of really great writings that he's going to share with us. So come on up. Thank you.
All right, so we went over some stories last night with these guys, and I had 3 ready, and they wanted me to read all of them. So I think they just probably couldn't get enough of watching me cry and stumble over my words. So, okay, so this is there's going to be some repeated themes from the story that you heard before. Like I said, I wasn't aware that I was going to be reading all 3 of them. So, but they're much shorter. So, all right. So, you wouldn't believe the difference of the Boise of my youth and the one you see today. Back then, it felt smaller, rougher around the edges. Like a lot of kids growing up here in the 90s, my path wasn't paved with sunshine and soccer practice. My story started with messy, tangled, petty crime, and a constant threat of violence. A future as uncertain as a homeless man's next meal. I was 17 with a hoodie clinging to my back against the ever-present chill, when it's scrawling across my whole life. That's when desperation, raw and desperate, took hold. I remember the Cathedral of the Rockies, its majestic spires a constant in the Boise North End. My mom used to drag me there when I was a kid. Her faith was a shield against the harsh realities of my life's direction. I figured maybe, just maybe, some of that peace would rub off on me. Headed up there one evening, the late sun turning the granite pink, I pushed on the heavy oak door, a sliver of hope cracking through my cynicism. But it wouldn't budge. The door was locked tight. I took that as a sign of the universe slamming the door shut on a lost cause like me. I walked away, head hung low, that rejection, the final nail in the coffin of any good intentions I may have had. For the next 10 years, I lived a life fueled by anger, that sense of abandonment. I became a career criminal, violence a language I spoke fluently, prison a revolving door of despair. But even in that darkness, a flicker, a memory, a faint persistence of a young boy with scuffed skate shoes sitting in a pew, sunlight filtering through stained glass. Maybe it was that, maybe something deeper. But during a particularly brutal lockdown in RDU, when I learned my father had died, something shifted. I picked up a Bible. The worn pages promises of redemption. I started attending the prison religious service, not for petty, but for a sliver of quiet. Slowly the words seeped in. Forgiveness. Hope. I got a job in the prison's kitchen and in the school. I started helping others. It was a small act of defiance against the violence that had consumed my life. On my release day, I stepped out into the sunlight, a man reborn, or at least trying to be. I started going to church with my mom every Sunday. I walked back up to the cathedral. This time, the heavy door opened easily. Here's the thing, I didn't know it back then. Standing on the steps, feeling both terrified and hopeful. Sometimes the answer to our prayers isn't yes. Sometimes it's not yet, or even a resounding no. That door locked wasn't a rejection, it was a redirection, a nudge towards a different path. A path I wasn't ready for then, but one I found eventually. Yesterday, I walked into the cathedral, this time not as a desperate teenager, but as an employee. I have the keys to the place now and can go in whenever I want. Those keys hold and jingle with melody of hope. They open doors, yes, but they also unlock a truth I carry with me every day. It's never too late. Your life matters. No crisis lasts forever. And there are people who will help. All you have to do is keep asking. So if you're out there, lost in the shadows, feeling like the universe has locked you out, remember this. There's always hope. Keep searching. Keep asking. And most importantly, keep believing. Because even in the darkest night, eventually gives way to the dawn. All right, so this is a story. It took place at ISCI, a breakdancing competition that went unexpected. Does anybody here know who Tim Estep is by chance? Yeah? Okay, yeah, Tim's in the story, so that should add some flavor to it. So it was 10 o'clock Monday night at ISCI, an Idaho State prison known as the Yard. It isn't known for its vibrant nightlife, especially from the inside of the binge walls and of the esteemed correctional facility. But let me tell you, that night, the fluorescent lit hallways outside my cell became the hottest dance floor on this side of the Snake River. It all started with the faint thump of bass creeping under my door. Now, contraband speakers in prison are as common as a spork, but the music, Tech 9, blasting defiance through the state air, curiosity stronger than any prison lockdown yanked me out of my bed. Peeking through the bars, I saw three young bucks, all hard eyes, sculpted muscles in their mid-20s, gangster rap personified, right down to the baggy prison blues hanging low. A circle formed around them, their audience a motley crew of inmates, some cheering, some just watching with a flicker of amusement in their tired eyes. The competition, if you would want to call it that, was already underway. Spins, freezes, a couple of shaky headstands. It was impressive for the concrete floor and limited space, but nothing earth-shattering. Then, just as I was about to dismiss this as another Monday night boredom cure, the door at the end of the hall clanged open. Then entered Tim Estep. Easy does it. Shuffling in his slippers, a man pushing 70. Now, Estep wasn't exactly known for his athleticism. Most days getting him from his bunk to the chow hall was an Olympic feat in itself. But that night, something shifted. He shuffled closer, drawn by the music, a slow smile spread on his weathered face. Then Estep did something that would have broken the internet if it had been filmed. He dropped. Not a stumble, not a fall, a controlled, smooth drop into a perfect headstand. Cheers erupted. Whistles flew. Estep held the pose, a mischievous glint in his eyes, before launching into a series of moves that defied his age and physique. Windmills, freezes that defy gravity, footwork that'd make a ballerina weep. Estep was a wind whirl of breakdancing fury. The young bucks, faces mix of awe and disbelief, tried to keep up, but they were outmatched. Estep owned the floor, the music, the entire hallway. It wasn't just the skill, though. It was the joy. Estep danced with infectious enthusiasm that transcended the bars and razor wire. For a fleeting moment, we weren't inmates. We were just people sharing a laugh. A connection forged through hip-hop and the unexpected. When the final note faded, Estep stood panting, a triumphant grin plastered on his face. The cheers were defeating. Even the young bucks, humbled but not defeated, clapped their hands. Estep, the unlikely champion, shuffled back to his cell, leaving behind a memory that would brighten the most mundane prison Tuesday for weeks to come. That night in the heart of the Idaho desert, a testament of human spirit unfolded. We may be locked away, but our capacity for joy, for compassion, for unexpected displays of awesomeness, that, my friends, can't be contained. Just imagine the viral gold that would have been if somebody caught that on camera.
So that concludes our readings. We are going to go into a Q&A session, so we hope that hope you're interested in asking some questions. It's like Rachel tells the ladies out at Sicky after they watch the sexual harassment video, if you don't ask questions, we're going to read everything all over again. So if there's anybody from the museum that I think we'd like to set up at least one or two more mics, I'm not sure if we have anybody. So we want to give one of those to our panel, and then I guess I can either give this one out to the audience, or I'm not sure how we do that. And then will you guys pass this? Will you talk into this as you answer, whoever? All right, so any questions for our panel, please, like don't be shy. Oh, we got one in the back in blue.
First of all, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations for the time that you've served and your sobriety. That's really impressive. You all just have some beautiful gifts, truly, so thank you again for being here. My question is if you guys have any ideas on how to resolve the staffing shortage. Either personal ideas that you discuss among yourselves and your groups, or maybe things that you've seen work in other jurisdictions, but particularly from those of you who have some time. Thank you again for being here.
Is this on? Are you, the question was how to resolve the staffing shortage?
Yeah, I'm trying to get ideas from the residents.
I think we've started it with the humanization of both sides. We're making it a better place to be. I know a lot of staff that feel more fulfilled in their jobs now. And I know a lot of the staff coming in have that counselor ideal instead of correction ideal. And I think that's the big shift, is we're seeing more social workers come into the facilities versus people that want to just do the punitive side of it.
Can I add to that? I did want to also add to that. There's a couple of things that have taken place with the Idaho Department of Corrections. One thing is they were locked into training at Post for the longest time, and Post would only put on so many academies. They had a capacity there that they basically just couldn't keep up with the hiring, especially when it came to after COVID. During COVID, there was not a lot of rehiring, and there was a lot of catch-up to do afterwards. They have since built a new training facility. They're able to put on many more academies. And I can tell you, just a few months back, I was at the American Correctional Association conference in Philadelphia, and there they were discussing percentages, staffing percentages. And out of all the states in the United States at that time, if you count the ones that were in training, Idaho was the highest staff percentage-wise, and they're catching up. I think they're doing really well.
I have something I could add to that. So I think a big factor of the staffing issues is that there's so many people going to prison. And I think, we can try to resolve things or try to make things more rewarding to get more people to come to work at the Idaho Department of Correction rather than Amazon or something, because it's the same age demographic for those people. But realistically, the answer to that question, where everyone wins, is to downsize the prison population. And you won't need all the staff. And I think a big part of that would probably take place. I mean, there's people that belong in prison, and there's a lot of growth that can take place there. I belonged in prison. But I think that a lot of it comes down to holding judges, prosecutors, and the parole board accountable. And that there should be evaluations that are taking place with an individual, and not just have it be a process where people are shuffled through, to where maybe their sentencing can be looked at again. Like my example, I was sentenced to 3 + 7. My 3 years in prison, I kept a job the whole time. I volunteered with the American Legion. I was required to take 3 classes. I took over 20. I went in front of the parole board after those 3 years, and they denied my parole for 2 years for criminal history, because I was already sentenced for my criminal history. My parole should be based on my behavior in prison and my parole plan, which was flawless. So I spent 2 extra years in prison because this board of 5 people didn't think that I was fit, even though I'd already been sentenced on that. So that's 2 extra years with having to have extra officers there, extra staff to feed me, everything, and so on and so forth. And I'm just one of thousands that this happens to every day. So the real question, or the real answer to that, is holding the people that send them accountable and setting up a system to where they can be reevaluated and maybe look at their sentences. Because there's people here that are in prison and they don't need to be there anymore.
Test. So my name's Sean Cameron, and obviously I know my brothers up here quite well. This is a twofold. First statement in the fact that coming from a place of having done 32 years, seeing you guys take advantage of these moments does absolutely trailblaze a lot of the guys that just can't come from a place of knowing exactly what it looks like to not have those advantages. And you guys are very humbling in the sense that your message is a ripple effect, and it's not just through Idaho. Other states are paying attention, and I feel like it's really exciting to be up against it, and I'm really proud of you guys all day long. We worked hard to get to where this is, but I think that the partnership with IDOC is something that is startlingly new, but absolutely a blessing. That being said, I feel like the number one situation at hand is always to address mental health. And as that goes, I'd ask Jay if he could maybe share, what are some things from the outside looking in that are being done so that the community can understand that bridging that gap so that they're involved on how to help that transition for a lot of guys that struggle. But what do you think the biggest thing is being done today to help those with mental health? And what can the community do to maybe walk that forward a little bit further?
Sean, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question. I mean, seriously, because what I see being done is just not enough. There's a sign that was just put in before the Perrin Bridge over there, but that's not going to do a lot. What is the number, 988, that someone can call for the emergency crisis line? There's several different organizations, but there's not a process that I am aware of that is the end-all, fix-all. And is it possible to even have an end-all, fix-all one there? But what we see is a lot of mental health issues that escalate into just going into the criminal involvement. And there was nothing. There was no fork in the road prior to that. So, like I say, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I'm not aware of what's really out there right now going on. Oh. Anybody else? Can anybody add to that?
What do you see for mental health? I don't think any of us are really, but
What they're doing? Or how to bridge it?
Right, so like I said, recidivism is based off of mental health issues that are going on, that are unaddressed. They are being addressed slowly, but as it goes, I mean, what are some of the things that are being done right now to help these guys? Because getting out's easy. Everybody's going to eventually get out at some point or time, for those that don't have life without. Once you get out, then what?
I think your question and our lack of a clear answer is the answer. Right? We don't know. I don't think any of us know. We're pretty closely tied to a lot of the services that are available, especially for reentry. And we actually had a real big discussion last night about mental health within the facilities. And there is a need, and a lot of it, from my perspective, it comes down to staffing. There's an overwhelming need, and it's just a challenge to staff. And that's why I love what TJ shared. I think the education on the front end, correctional services, and why we're doing the things that we're doing, those are really important questions to be asking the people that are making the calls on this. But did you have anything on that, Rachel?
No, not
At
really.
this point, we should all know.
Yeah,
It should be at that point where we all know.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the question. I think it just shows us how much work there is to be done in that area. So,
Chris, I do have one thing to say about that though. Has anybody tried to get in to see a counselor in these last few years? There's a wait list. And if it's hard out here to see a therapist, psychologist, it's doubly hard in there, right? Just, you can't find the people, you can't hire the people to do it all. There's a demand everywhere for it, and I don't think we found the solution anywhere in our community or the prisons for it. So,
one thing I'll add to that, and I will get your question, is I think that's one of the powerful things about peer support and what Michael is doing and Rachel's involved in and Sean was a part of. In fact, just a shout out to you, Sean, thank you. Sean was actually the one that really got a lot of us past our nervousness and losing nights of sleep, having to talk to a small group of guys in prison about what was going on in prison. So thank you, Sean. You've helped a lot of us come a long way. But as peers, as people with lived experience, one of the things that we realized is that we can step forward and we can fill gaps in services that exist. And we've got tremendous support from the Idaho Department of Corrections to be able to do that. And I think a big part of the answer is all of us doing what we can, having those conversations that we can with whoever we're able to. So I just chipped that in there. But Megan, I think this is my sister, that's why I know her. You had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on your question, Sean. One thing I would say, just as having a family member growing up with my brother incarcerated, I feel like one of the things that I've personally experienced is people's mind shift around those that are incarcerated just by connecting with someone who can give them like a real experience or example. So if the public doesn't know anybody who's been on that side of the coin, then they generally have an opinion about what those people must be. But the moment they get to connect with your real stories and the humanity that you guys have talked to, there's not a person in my life today that is not rooting for Chris's release. And they don't know him personally, like many of these people, but I think those types of things can help close the gap of mental health. Like, they're more open, people can be open to having being in a relationship and creating opportunities, whether it's employment or housing, that all contribute to mental health. So I feel like that's one thing, is doing exactly what you're doing, is giving this platform in a public way. This is how people can connect and realize these are humans. These are other humans that struggle just like we all do, and their paths just look a little bit different than mine. So I think this kind of thing is incredible. And then the only other question I would have related to that is I do work in healthcare, and so wondering, does the prison have access to like telehealth or mental health programs? Because telehealth is huge now, just in the public sector, so I'm wondering if that could ever be an option in a prison setting to bring more providers.
Anybody up here want to fill that? Budget, security.
Oh, yeah. Did actually talk about it.
I can tell you that we do have mental health staff on and a chief clinician. But I have to talk about capacity with that. It's just like you were talking about how it takes to get, I need to, how hard it is to get an appointment. And I've heard that a lot of times they can't get in to see a clinician that they need to see when there's a mental health assistance. As far as the telehealth, I do know that we started using it during COVID. I don't know if it continued on. But that is something that we were utilizing for a while. Prior to COVID, I don't think hardly anybody was doing Zoom. Or, I think we did a couple of FaceTime funerals in a particular facility. But other than that, prior to COVID, we weren't using anything like that. Now we're using it for court. Now we're using it for parole hearings. We're using it for telehealth, I believe, still a little bit. And this morning we're discussing utilizing that to put people in parent-teacher conferences at school. So.
And I can actually touch on that a little bit. So I'm at the Treasure Valley Community Reentry Center, and I know that in our reentry centers there is an option where we're able to access healthcare in the community. And I know I have heard actually stories about people accessing telehealth. So I know it's happening. It's not like a regular thing, but it is an option. The most important thing is you have to be willing to ask for the help, which sometimes is really difficult when you need the help. So it's a work in progress, but I can share that's a really, I think, a pretty recent thing, but that is something that is happening. And for anybody that doesn't know, Community Reentry Center is like the lowest custody level in Idaho Department of Corrections. And so ideally, people transition to the community from those, but there's not near enough beds for everybody that's releasing, so it is a challenge. But yeah, Mario.
I have a statement for that question. So I do know that I don't know if everybody, those of us that have been in prison, I don't think there's one single person in prison that doesn't have mental health problems. Not one. So you figure you've got, what's the prison population right now? 10,000. So can you imagine trying to manage that caseload if you're the one that's trying to manage it? There's all of us that have been there come from tortured, battered souls. And I remember waking up in jail and being transferred to prison and then hitting the prison yard and just being broken over and over and over and over again. And really there's no, it's hard to keep up with that many people. And if you've got, probably 2 or 3 per facility, maybe 5 and a couple of different ones that help with mental health. That's a hard number to catch up with, right? With that many people that need help. So I think it comes from within, and I think these guys are acting perfectly on track, right? So if we can't get the help through mental health that's required, I think that those of us that are having, these guys are having their peer support programs and they're like helping bolster what needs to be bolstered, because kind of like if you can't fix it yourself, if you can't get it fixed, you fix it yourself, right? And I know it's hard when you're broken like we are to be able to like, hey, how am I going to fix this problem? What am I going to do? When you're around other people that care, other people that know you, other people that, they live with you, they go to sleep with you, they wake up with you, they go to rec with you, all that. When you're around that kind of environment, that's where the growth comes, really, right? I think what's going on inside the system right now, where we've got the administration, the executive leadership, all the street level boots on the ground, COs that are just like, they're all coming up with this situation right here. They're letting peer support happen. They're letting people talk to each other, letting people group up together, letting people learn, and kind of like feel normal again, right? Because Chris, his name is Chris. My name is Mario. It's not 31231. It's not Hernandez. It's Mario, right? start making people feel like, we're normal again, that's when the transitioning starts to happen. So I'm really glad, first of all, I'm proud of these guys. These guys are doing a great job. And I think that DOC is going to bring it together for Chris, you, Sean, you know that. I think that those of you that don't know that about DOC, it's getting better. And we're making strides and huge progression in mental health. So just kind of in answer to that, we're getting there. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Just add to Sean, I really believe that the question has part of the answer in it, is asking that question. Because it creates this dialogue. I don't know. I believe that is part of the answer, though, is that asking that question and creating that conversation and realizing that we may not have an answer to that question, but the awareness, increased awareness about that is critical. Jay mentioned, ACEs. A lot of people aren't familiar with adverse childhood experiences. A lot of people don't understand concrete trauma. The process, this is part of that process to me, that we're in it. And so, I have another one, but I forgot what it was because I was talking too much. But it did have to do with the staff and all of these issues that we come up with. There are solutions to all of these questions that we have. We're in the process of trying to work on all of these issues that for the longest time have just been business as usual. Like, I only spent in Knighton County Jail for 32 years, but the reality of that is that I've seen the culture shift in all of this process to where we are today, to where this forum is available for us, which is still mind-blowing to have, Jay Christensen sitting up here talking about what Jay is talking about when he's been in a uniform for a third of his life, or half of his life. And this group is together is pretty phenomenal in and of itself. So there's some solutions right there in this if we identify these problems. So I just want to add to that is that I happen to believe that the mental health issues are just like the staffing issues, or just like any of the other issues, that if we can talk about those and have open forum and humanize this, these topics, we're going to be closer and closer to the solution if we keep on seeing that we're all in this together. Whether it's in there, out here, returning to here, all these topics are really basically human needs. And that's where we lose track of this, is that we polarize X, Y, and Z. Instead of coming together and just saying, look, this is a us issue, and so we need a us solution. So, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, the lady in the white has a question.
Yeah, I am a professional in the mental health field, and I was honored to be able to run a mental health work program out in Caldwell, so it's an alternative to prison. And it was such a powerful experience, and I had phenomenal leaders who let me be really creative, and knowing that a lot of those solutions were experiential to help people move through their addiction process. I personally had a friend who had a meth addiction, and how she got over it was through learning how to fire spin. So they let me teach our participants how to fire spin, and doing sound baths, and a lot of the things that you guys are talking about, they're kind of currently going through more experiential type. But anyways, all that to say is it was a phenomenal opportunity to get creative and weekly come up with new ideas to help them move through all the challenges they were going through. But the most powerful was the peer supports. I didn't have the lived experience, and I kept seeing what was the most effective with our participants. And parties are great, Halloween, all the fun community vibe that I was bringing was great, but it was the peer support, them knowing someone else had been in their same shoes and walking them through it. So I'm curious about the peer support program that you guys have going on right now and what that looks like.
Yeah, who wants to talk about that one? Rachael. Tell us about it.
So on the women's side, we have like over 100 people involved right now. I think we have like 15 members right now, and yeah, so we're almost at 30. And so basically, what we do is we're a community that supports one another. We meet with people one-on-one, mentor-mentee style, and just try to help guide people through whatever they're going through. Also, we're able to create our own curriculum for like classes. So like we have one of my friends took the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and created her own curriculum from that book and taught a class. And so not only did she create that, but other people have been able to take the class. Like I didn't create the class, but I have helped facilitate it and facilitated it on C-tier. And so we're able to create something and then teach it and pass it on to somebody else, and then they're able to teach it, and it kind of ripple effects.
That's awesome.
The training process is like. Well, Michael's our teacher, and we have a 10-week course where we learn about advocacy, motivational interviewing, a lot of different things. We put those skills into practice. So right now what they're doing is we just had 12 people graduate, right? And these girls will shadow the ladies that are already mentoring for the next 30 days, and then we will shadow them and kind of do they call it PIP, Positive Improvement PIP, and watch how they work, and then they'll go on there.
We get somebody to tell you their solution. And that's what the mentors are doing. They're leading their lives, being those role models, and then just listening to people, because out here, it's hard to get somebody to listen to you, really, especially with phones now. In there, he said it best when he said that it's like walking through the lion's den. Everybody picks up on that weakness, and they will attack that weakness. It's out of fear if I attack you, nobody's going to attack me, because we're attacking you. You know, we're picking on that person that's standing out. And the mentors now are that example of life can be different. We can support each other, we can lift each other up, and it's grown to such a wonderful thing with staff and residents working together. You would be blown away by some of the things that we're doing now. I've never seen it in 25 years. So,
Michael's training mentor teams in every prison facility across the state, so we've got some pretty good things going on. Yeah. Dad?
I have not so much a question, but a statement. I know for some of you guys it was really nerve-wracking to get up here and tell your story, and for that I commend you. And my statement really is to JT. I know landscaping is what you do, but today I think you showed what you are as a writer and a speaker. So I commend you for having the strength and courage to get up there and tell your story. Thank you. Thank you, Ben.
We've got Steve up front and then a lady in the back. And okay, we've got time for one more.
Oh, no, we have another question.
Oh, okay, we got another question. Okay, we got one more time. Just a quick reminder, we're going to try to wrap up and get out of here about, we'll say 20 after. Is that okay? Okay, so we're good for that. All right. So we'll take those questions. Steve, please.
My question, TJ, you used an expression, I've done a lot of volunteer work in prisons, and had the same thought. So-and-so doesn't belong in prison, like when I met Chris. no longer belongs in prison. And you use that expression that resonated with me. Is there a way that we can keep whittling as a culture, as a society, on quantifying who belongs in prison and for how long? Is there a way to even maybe utilize those who are incarcerated to help make decisions if we, that's just my question. How can we quantify, since we got huge prison populations that just keep growing, who actually belongs in prison?
Well, JT was talking about the accountability, or TJ, sorry. He was talking about the accountability of your voted officials and so forth. There's some things that's been discussed. When I first started for the department, back in the 80s, we had what they call good time. A good time is where if you are successful so many years without any kind of problems in discipline or anything like that, you get so many more years knocked off your sentence. And the way the staff saw that, that was a powerful tool. That was a powerful tool for them to work hard at not violating discipline and working towards their reduced sentence. That we no longer sentence under good time. There's also, I believe you heard Rachel talk about mandatory minimum that she was sentenced to. Somebody could have absolutely no criminal background whatsoever, and just because the amount of something that they have in their possession could sentence them to 3 years. It could be their first crime ever if they had the right amount. So there's mandatory minimums that I think that's something that we could express with the lawmakers. Our opinion that judges need a little bit more flexibility in sentencing, and seeing that this is a first-time offender. Really, the mandatory minimum should not, apply in cases like that. Sentencing overhauls, I believe, is something that can be done here. I think good time was a great thing, personally. It was a great tool for us, and it was something that they really worked hard on.
There's one thing that it took me 24 years to learn in prison, and it surprised me at year 24. Idaho Department of Correction has no control over who comes in or who goes out of the system, right? The judges decide who comes in, and the parole board, who is a separate entity, I thought they were always corrections, custom out loud, sorry, launch in there. But the parole board is a separate entity that just answers to the governor, basically. They have their own little, so it's really getting to the lawmakers and saying, hey, something's got to change, because this has been going for how many decades and clearly not working. But they're doubling down and saying, yeah, we need more mandatory minimums, stronger ones. And that's scary. That's just more prisons.
Thank you. We'd like to, yes, you with your hand up, Ms. Brown. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for sharing your story. I have not been in prison, but I spent 14 years in foster care and felt a little like prison at certain points. So, and I've told my story publicly, and I understand the courage it takes to be that vulnerable, so I really respect that. And my question kind of piggybacks on a lot of the questions that we've heard, but we come and we do things like this, and we have this captive audience whose hearts are like wide open, and I know, like me, like wanting to support and do something to support these efforts. And so I wonder, is there an organization that is working on moving legislation to look at some of these things that we as the public could rally around? Or do you, maybe each of the panelists, have like one small thing that you can give us to do after this to support any of the efforts that you feel are most important?
Mine's easy. Join Free to Succeed. They're a mentor program for citizens helping people get out of prison.
With the Idaho Department of Corrections?
Yeah.
You can sign up to be a part of that program by getting on their website.
I know that there's Families Against Mandatory Minimums. They call themselves FAM, and they are fighting against mandatory minimums. And I also believe the Idaho Justice League or Justice Department or something like that also.
Idaho Justice Project.
Thank you.
I think we had the last question over here, and then we'll try to clear out. I know there's another venue coming in soon.
So the state of Idaho recently decided that execution by firing squad is a viable option. I know that the facility has not been built yet, and my question is kind of twofold. Any comments about the possibility of a firing squad, and any comments about the state of Idaho and its 8 failed attempts on Mr. Creech?
I think Jay said it best, though. No matter where you stand on it, we are examples of people that have had that death row hang over our heads. And my plea bargain took that off the table. People can change. That's my thought on it. And I don't know.
I think we could really dive into that, but I think you said it perfectly. I'm a big believer in not getting caught up looking at the weeds, and let's focus on where we want to go. And I think that's a great place to go. So thanks, Michael. With that, I wanted to give Mario a quick shout out. Mario Hernandez, former resident, returning citizen, founder of Learning How to Live. He helped us with all our audio video recording today. He's actually my apprentice, and I'm apprenticing under him, along with a lot of other men and ladies from the SICI and ISCI facilities. He's an incredible guy. He's a great example of what it looks like to get out, build that path we need, and he's coming back in for us. So thank you, Mario, for everything you're doing for us. But thank you everybody who supports us and who has helped make this possible. The Idaho Prison Arts Collective, there's so many people who've given us so much. Thank you. I appreciate the Idaho State Museum. You guys have been amazing. This is a beautiful venue. We really appreciate being here. We hope we can make it back here next year. So thank you everybody so much. Please sign up. I think on the back table we have an email sign-in sheet for our electronic mailing list. Please sign up if you want to stay informed or get involved with us. But thank you everybody for supporting us, and thank you to our panel. You guys were incredible.